and I'm here with Meg Daly. Meg, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Hi, Carie. It's good to see you. It's
It's
good to
great.
see someone.
It's great to see you. So, Meg, where are you now, and how have the recent events surrounding the COVID-19 virus changed the structure of your life and your work?
So, Carie, you and I met each other through your work at the University of Miami at the School of Architecture, and the school was instrumental in, helping us get this big project that we're working on called the Underline, which is a 10-mile linear park and trail below Metro Rail. So it's repurposing 120 acres of dead space into a public amenity. Um, and I'm working right now out of my home office. We're a small little nonprofit. We have a couple of free desks at a co-working space downtown near our construction site of our first phase in the Brickell community. Because I really work where my laptop is, our funding is primarily for construction public money. And so if I need to talk to a mayor or an elected official, or even our partners at the transportation department, it's really unlikely they're going to meet me at my home. So I'm on the go, going to meetings throughout the day. So I'm very externally facing. So being in isolation has forced us to explore the reality of doing virtual contact, right? So first we tried Google Hangouts, which I don't know if it's the fact that I'm 59 or something, or the number of people on it. It was a big fail for us. Zoom seems to be very easy, sort of one click, and we're now using Zoom for even virtual yoga classes. And we had 80 people attending our class last weekend. So we're trying to keep some programming alive as we're in this isolation phase. It's also really interesting is that my husband runs his business out of the home. And then my daughter and her boyfriend are both entrepreneurs in separate businesses, and they're now working out of our house as well. So we have 4 plus, because there's some sidebar stuff going on as well. My husband created this email newsletter with his movie recommendations. So we have 4 plus businesses operating under one roof right now.
And would you say somehow that that synergy is changing the way you think about things? Because prior to that, like you said, you were more externally focused, but now you have a shared space with all of these differing businesses operating out of it. Has that somehow changed the way that you're even thinking about what you're working on?
Well, my daughter's boyfriend created the Underline brand, the name and the brand. So he's in the dining room. Our daughter has her own PR firm out of New York, and so she helps us pro bono with our communications plan. My husband is, my lifelong consultant and partner, and so just having them, around the corner is really nice. I can sort of, hey, Hamish, what about this? And Alex, what do you think about an op-ed right now? And so we are all very interconnected anyway, but it's really nice to be under one roof, and then also having someone for dinner, right? And so Hamish, loves making bread, and the ritual of food preparation is become much more important in our daily life, since we're not venturing out, so there's that conversation and the convening in the kitchen around the hearth and the table, which is really sort of like it helps us keep track of our day, right? So I know I went from one question to another, but there's this issue with time. Like, how do you make how do you make Monday feel different than Sunday? And so one of the things that we've done is we operate pretty much on the schedule that we would with or without confinement. So we're all getting up around 7, typically exercise in the morning. My exercise classes I'm doing remotely. I'm taking Pilates from my daughter's Pilates studio in New York on Zoom. We're usually at our desks by 9. and just work all day. And then tend to sort of close up shop around 6, and then we figure out who's cooking dinner that night, and then and then watch a movie or read a book, but there's the scheduling and being productive during a time where we're so displaced by isolation has, I think, really been very helpful. And also, I think shows that maybe a lot more could be done remotely than we do. So do I really need to take the train downtown or drive downtown or hop on a plane and go for a meeting here or there? There may be some ways that we communicate that's going to change dramatically because of the efficiency, like for what you and I are doing right now.
Yes, yeah, I would agree. So Meg, in this isolation, but continuing to work, have you had any thoughts about what you feel this recent COVID-19 crisis will have on the future design of cities, the impact it might have on the world of architecture?
So as you know, I'm not an architect, so I guess I would speak more to my passion for parks. And I think that great parks really are the heart and soul of a great city. And it's been really interesting how cities have approached parks and their closure during this time. So in New York, and we know this, we're part of this network of infrastructure reuse projects where we meet virtually every week, and we talk about how our individual cities, counties, states are approaching isolation. And so very early in Miami, our parks were closed, and for social distancing reasons. But in New York, they were actually wanted to open streets and close them to cars because they had so much more density. So they were saying, we see this hunger for more public spaces and really justification of this work. And then in Miami and other communities that are less dense, I mean, I wonder if we're going to trust our public spaces, when this is done. So you go to the one-on-one, and maybe this will all be forgotten in short order, or maybe we won't shake hands anymore. Maybe we'll change the way that we greet people. And in Miami, we're so affectionate, right? So the hug with family members, will that change? So I really wonder how that one-to-one greeting is going to happen. And then when you're really going to want to, walk next to someone. Fifth Avenue, right, or any of our major corridors that were so tightly compressed. How are we going to feel about the safety of our streets and our sidewalks and our public spaces? And I really more wonder about that. Are we going to think that this was at a moment in time that was an anomaly, or is this something that we're going to think is looming? Because we have many generations that have never been through a pandemic. Certainly not my mother, myself, our children, or our grandchildren. And so are we going to have sort of this nagging thought that this is something that could hit us any given time? And do we need to rethink our public spaces so that people trust being in them and trust being with people when they're in them?
Yes, and so in light of the underlying project as it stands right now, you mentioned that you're in the first phases of construction. So has the construction continued? And in your conversations with your team, have you already begun to speak about maybe potential changes that could happen to the designs? Or is it too early?
We spent a lot of time, looking at the built environment of how people connect to place and how they connect to each other, and the public space is supposed to be that invitation and also that acceptance of you are welcome here. So if the public space is welcoming, but the person you're sitting next to isn't anymore, how do you rethink a space that's already under construction? And we spend a lot of time thinking about, how do you make sure that people feel safe. So you introduce lighting, you introduce security, you make sure that there's armrests on long benches so that you're able to sit up and the person next to you is not sleeping. But we have a 50-foot dining table so that, you know, is really designed for programming and activation, and certainly for people to break bread. It was really intended to be a place that we come together. We're seeking a Wi-Fi partner so that people will just hang out. We have seating areas for 40 people. This is a congregation space. And when we open, yes, construction is ongoing right now, which is a bit of a challenge because there's social distancing requirements. I don't know how you lift a table without two people standing, you know, less than 6 feet from each other, but I guess they're figuring it out. So I don't know. I don't know how people are going to feel in this space once it's open. I mean, we have a lot of natural components. So there's a lot of vegetation, you know, trees, butterfly gardens. So it's meant to be a reintroduction of nature in the urban context. But this first phase is, you know, has a lot of places for people to come together. Dog parks. You know, they had to close down dog parks in New York this week because there were too many people congregating. But then my daughter and I got out this weekend and we drove from our home in Coral Gables. We live right by the University of Miami campus in the Gables. And it was the first time I visited the Brickell construction site. And Brickell was quiet. There was nobody out, you know, so the stay-at-home order is working. Miami Beach had no one on the streets. All those hotels and restaurants are closed. But then you drive down Venetian Causeway and there's runners and cyclists everywhere. You have, I come back to my neighborhood where you see occasionally a family of four on their bicycles, and they're out now and people are walking. So I would say that there's two sides to this. This constriction maybe is going to give us a suspicion of public spaces, but maybe we will have adapted our behaviors a little bit to actually get out and walk and bike more, which is one of the pillars of the Underline project. So I don't know, there might be two sides of that coin.
I mean, I think you bring up a very important point in listening to you speak, and my own belief is that the need for collective gathering is, I think, really, it's a need. It's part of our human existence. It's why cities are developed, essentially, because we're not meant to live, or very few of us actually, maybe, you know, a monastic order might be willing to live in isolation. But I think there are exceptions. Generally, we want to gather collectively. And I think that when we emerge from this, I believe projects like yours will become ever more important within the context of the development of cities like Miami, which has not really invested in its public realm.
Yeah.
But I do think that what you said is that it won't be the death of public space, but it may be the altering of our behaviors or our rituals as we lead up towards collecting in the public realm that might radically change. So
you know, Carie, I think that, you know, you bring up such a good point, and I think it goes to the heart of humanity, is that we are not on this earth to be alone. And there's a mental health piece to this, which I think is really important. We've talked about physical health, that, you know, people are actually not going to their gyms. I know people are getting, I am getting 2 times the exercise I was getting, you know, pre-coronavirus, because I'll take a virtual Pilates class and I'll walk 4 miles. And to me, it helps sort of bookend my day. But there are a lot of people who are struggling in isolation and dealing with anxiety. Just anecdotally, like my daughter has an employee who just said, you know, Alex, I am so off. I'm having panic attacks during the day because of this confinement. And I have a dog and the dog park is closed. And for me, I can't see my grandchildren. My next door neighbor, hasn't seen any of her 5 children, you know, so if you look at the family unit, I think that we will treasure, you know, that time we have together more when we come out of here. out of this moment in time. Hopefully we all do. But I think that there's going to be a real appreciation of even a restaurant as a public space, since we can't go to them and, have a beer with someone, or break bread together. And I think that we're going to hopefully appreciate those moments more, value them more, and demand that our leadership build their cities, with a deeper appreciation for public spaces, how we behave in them. It may be short-lived. I certainly don't want to wear gloves and a mask for the rest of my life when I go to the grocery store. It's a weird feeling, this antiseptic approach to everything we're doing. And I hope it doesn't stick around. I hope it doesn't have to.
Yes, indeed. Meg, thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your day, which still seems to be structured and as busy as ever, in different ways, but still productive. So thanks for taking a few minutes to talk to me today. And really, I wish you all the best, and hope you continue to be safe and well, as all your family. So,
well, Carie, this is such a great idea that you're doing this. I mean, a lot of people will say, I don't know what to do, right? And you're seizing an opportunity, because this might be this one moment in time that we're experiencing what we're experiencing. And if we're not gathering the data and the stories, we'll never be able to retell them. So thank you so much for thinking of me and your passion for cities, and really promoting the vision for them. Because we're all responsible for what we become after we come out of this.
Indeed. I think that's a great way to end. Thanks, Meg.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.